county and all the city's laws, codes, rules, and ordinances. And the interesting point is if you add up all of the words in all of the laws that you're currently obligated to know and obey in the United States of America, where ignorance of the law is no excuse, and you assume that you're going to live 81.3 years, which is the average lifespan of Americans today, and you read at a 12th grade level, which is 200 words a minute, and you read every minute of your statistical life, you cannot read one time the laws you're currently obligated to know and obey. And so, where ignorance of the law was no excuse, ignorance of the law is now everyone's excuse, because there is so much. Now, nature abhors a vacuum, and she always fills it. Law fills the vacuum created by a lack of love. Government fills the vacuum created by a lack of personal responsibility. Religion fills the vacuum created by a lack of intellectual rigor. And ego fills the vacuum created by an inability to hear the voice within. Now, where energy, information, and consciousness, therefore the only possible meaning of existence, is infinite experience, and the only gracious way to interact with one another is liberty, where we have self-ownership, self-reliance, private property, the right of association, and the right of consent. We have, and not only consent, but informed consent, right? Our founding document, the Declaration of Independence, says we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they're endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. Now, that's the whole point of government, is to protect your inalienable rights. It's not to run schools or address building codes or anything else. It's to protect your liberty. And then it goes on and it says, deriving their just power from the consent of the governed. Now, when have any of you ever consented to all of this? You were born into it. You were given the bum's rush and indoctrinated in the K through 12 indoctrination program we call public education, which is 15,000 hours, and we're taught to be submissive to authority. Now, after informed consent, another feature of liberty is the non-aggression principle, which says briefly that no one has a right to initiate force against another, and that any interaction between people that is not voluntary is inherently illegitimate. Now, liberty has other features, such as anonymity. You have a right to be born and live your life without anybody knowing who you are. You don't have to have a name or a social security number or any identity at all. You can remain totally and completely anonymous. That is one of your inalienable rights. If you choose to align and socially interact and divulge information about yourself, whatever information you do divulge is your information, and you have a right to privacy of that information. It's not to be publicly distributed. And so the main features of liberty, again, then are self-ownership, self-reliance, private property, denoted as exclusive control. You have the non-aggression principle, informed consent, the right of association, anonymity, and privacy. That is liberty. I hope this helps all of you understand a little bit more that if we would comprehend liberty and respect it, we wouldn't need locks anymore. No one would steal anything. Count up all the locks on your computer, on your house, in your car. They're everywhere. They're expensive. We wouldn't need police anymore, or their cars, or their tool belts and their guns and their bullets and all the oil changes and the gasoline that they spend and the sirens and the dispatchers and that whole retirement program for police. It would just all be irrelevant. It would be unnecessary anymore. And all the courts and the bailiffs and the clerks and the jails and the prisons and the prison guards and their huge compensation and retirement packages. All of that would go away. And then the big one, the military intelligence complex, all the aircraft carriers and the fuel they burn and the jets and the tanks and the bazookas and guns and bombs and bullets and bases and all the millions of man hours that are spent in blowing things up, training to blow things up, and then rebuilding them. If we would just comprehend and respect liberty, all of those monies that we spend on all those things I just enumerated and many more would simply go away. And we could redeploy all those resources to the evolution of man. We would be wildly, obscenely wealthy beyond what we all are now. There would be no disease. And that's the reason why we have these pandemics now. Because we have wasted our time and our resources in ridiculous, childish things. And so the first thing we need to do to go from where we are to where we're soaring amongst the stars with each other, with great goodwill and love for one another, is we need to comprehend liberty. So we have the meaning of existence, which is infinite experience, and we have the ultimate truth of the universe, which is liberty, and we come now to the nature of man. It's been my experience in life that from things that I've read, beginning with Plato in his Symposium, he talks about the androgynous nature, the original nature of man, which was bipolar. It was masculine, had a masculine pole and a feminine pole. And he talks about how we were androgynous like this, and we evolved to a certain point, and then we realized that we could evolve faster and better if we could be divided and go out and then at some point reconnect that primordial circuit and find our other halves. What I'm speaking of is a concept most people know as soulmates, but which is more accurately described as twin souls. Soulmates, you can have many. You know, this is a relationship with another human being at a soul level, a very intimate connection. But a twin soul, you have only one. It's your literal other half of your soul. Now, this concept exists in every religious tradition that we know of, if not in its general expression, certainly in its esoteric expression. Some are more developed than others. In Christianity, for example, which most Americans arise out of, it's from Adam and Eve. You have to ask yourself, where did Eve come from? Well, she came from Adam's rib, which is kind of a cryptic implication that she was split from his side. In Kabbalah, which is the esoteric expression of Judaism, you find it in the writings of the Zohar, and the Star of David is in fact the symbol of twin souls. It's a two-dimensional symbol with an upward pointing equilateral triangle, and in 3 dimensions it would be a tetrahedra. And the upward pointing triangle is the masculine, representing the penis pointing up, and the downward pointing triangle is the vagina, the feminine, and they're overlaid on each other. You'll notice the twin soul symbol is somewhat similar to the logo of the Making Pegasus project. It's the yin-yang symbol, where they nest perfectly together, and where one is part of the other. The dark paisley has the dark eye in the white paisley, and the white paisley has the dark eye of the black paisley. So they're in each other and split apart you're still part of that other being somewhere. And the greatest joy and what most humans all desire is they want to be loved. They want a special love. They want a connection at the soul level. They want to find their other half. And this is why poetry exists, and music and love songs and great love stories, whether written or in movie format. Everybody wants to find this. They want to find their other half. And how do you do it? Well, best I can tell, I've read a few books on it, probably about 30 books, and as I understand it, it comes back to what was emblazoned above the portals to Apollo's temple in Delphi. Know thyself. And the reason that's important is because only when you know who you are, when you've done the work, when you've dismantled the ego and the personas that we wear and that we deploy to get us what we think we want, we're left with who we really are. And the reason that's important is because only when you know who you are will you recognize your other half when you encounter them. Why? Because they'll be like you. But if you don't know who you are, they could be sitting right next to you and you would never recognize them. And so the next thing is, after you've done the work and you've stripped yourself of as much ego as you can, or all of it really, so that you know who you are, the next thing to do is to be still, so that you can hear the voice within, so that you can hear the beacon of your other half calling to you, and to be uncompromisingly obedient to what you hear. And anyways, those are the thoughts I wanted to share with you today. I hope you all find great true love, because when you find your other half, the greatest joy in existence is